All right, we have another one of these guides. I don't need a guest for this one because I'm actually pretty good at Vampire Coast. Not amazing, but pretty darn good. Same as the other one, I will go through everything's general function and then try and keep that as non-patch specific as possible. Then I'll talk about good builds for this specific patch that we're on. I think it's like 6.0. Aranus Assault Spite is the first lord here. She is a generic supportive kind of lord, not a good duelist. She's mostly used for her net on a shooting roster. She can be good if you're worried about one large, important, expensive target trying to carry the game. Think of Archaon, think of Jabberscythe for the Beastmen, think of Bretonia's Hippogriff Knights or Grail Knights. She can net something in place and it just gets obliterated by guns before it can retreat and get any healing. So she's good for a bit of a surprise factor on an enemy. Ooh, she's also good versus Tomb Kings because she stops the cats dead in their tracks. But she is mortal. She can't receive any healing, so her limited health pool is what you got. She's very niche. Luther Harkon is decent at sniping enemy mage lords, usually when they're quite expensive because he himself is crazy expensive. So you generally need to pick a target that's worth it. He is a terrible generalist. He cannot fight multi-entity anything well. So he needs to have a big, expensive, important target to snipe out that can win you the entire game. If that's not the case, you shouldn't be bringing him. Vampire Fleet Admiral of Polearms is just cheaper Count Noctilus, I guess. He has some generic AoE debuffs and buffs, really good lore selection. Generally, the Pistol Caster is just better, but if you, for some reason, really want the melee stats without taking Noctilus for some reason, then I guess this is your guy. I guess. Jumping over to the Pistol Caster, though, she has way better Winds of Magic generation, which you generally want out of a cheap caster lord, but this guy focuses on melee, but he's not that good at melee. This lady focused fully on just being a cheap spellcaster, and she's amazing at that, especially if you want a Death Caster on the Undead, because you can just take Spirit Liege, Fate of Buna. I know that's patch specific, but bear with me. Skip All Hands Ahoy, skip Opal Amulet, and she's 1,700 gold. You can even cut the Hunger if you want. She's 1,500 gold, so pretty cheap. Really good casters, very efficient at what they do. Celestia Deerfawn is a specific caster, usually taken for a Rotting Leviathan to be crazy tanky, or just on foot because she's a ghost. She still causes terror when even on foot, so she can be a really cheap Pterosaurus, but this makes her quite squishy when she's on foot. There's a bug where I have to do this, but see, without the mount, she only has 4,500 HP and 0 armor. Borderless Flagellum is terrible. You never take it unless it got changed in a future patch or something. Kiss of the Deep is good if you take Tide Call and like Spiteful Shot or Fog of the Damned. Kiss of the Deep is terrible if you take Vangeist's Revenge or Denizens of the Deep. You need a lot of casts to make Kiss of the Deep worth it, so only take it if you're taking a bunch of cheap spells. Arctic Conduit's fine. Song of Enthrallment, Ghost of the Past are both solid, but usually you see her taken for either double summons, Ghost of the Past and Denizens of the Deep for a rush, or if you're playing defensive, she might try and cheeky Vangeist's Revenge to wipe out some infantry on the front line for only 20 Winds of Magic. But she's useful as defensive or offensive. She's just very gimmicky, so you have to really lean into the gimmick. And then Count Noctilus, he's been meta forever and there's a reason. His mixed spell lore means there's very few patches where he is completely worthless. Like he just has a mix of good spells. And then he has summons tied to an item and summons on his main. So unless summons are literally garbage, Noctilus is good. His Necrofex Colossus mount is good if your opponent is trying to kite you with mid-range stuff. He can provide long-range artillery to force them into you. And then he can heal himself up, which is also pretty brutal. And Wraithstorm is just good at taking out expensive targets. So Noctilus is worth quite a lot of money, but he's also very strong. So he's a very strong, solid lord. You see him most of the time because he provides a lot of what the Vampire Fleet Admiral provides, and a lot of what Luther provides, and some lord sniping. But then he's also tanky, like Celestia is, unless you have magic damage. But he doesn't rely on the. If you have magic damage, he just has 60 melee defense and a high HP pool with insane armor. Whereas this guy, he has less armor, less HP. I don't know. He's just not quite as tanky as Nocti is. So Noctilus is tanky and does a ton of damage, which is why people usually take him. As for the heroes, unlike the Skaven guide, your heroes have nothing to do with your lord selection. They actually have more to do with what the rest of your army is doing. I guess, okay, one. The caster hero, obviously you take them if you take Luther or Aranessa, because then you don't have a caster. They're fine. I have a lot of the same things to say about them that I said about the Vampire Fleet Admiral pistols, but you only take them if you have a non-caster lord, which is rare. Morgul Haunter generally sucks, but the times he's good is when he's a very fast, 52 speed, 54 speed is good for the coast. He causes terror, he does decent damage, He has Frostbite, so he's good at chasing down stuff, especially like Skaven, Beastmen, Greenskins. Low leadership, low armor factions, he can cause some disruption. On this current patch, he sucks, but that's his function. He's not exactly a duelist, he's more of a disruptor. A disruptive monster that's in the hero slot. Gunnery White is almost entirely for air cheese, or air kite, however you want to say it. His natural bound more powder, replenishing the ammunition of gun bats, is pretty much the only reason to take this guy. Nothing on the ground is ever going to run out of ammo. It's all about those flying units running out of ammo. So you take him for that, and that's all he's good for. His gun has always been pretty bad. His bomb throw and other special abilities are all pretty bad. You just want to make him as cheap as possible while keeping his reload, so probably just keep Scab Scrafe and maybe put him on a Rotting Promethean, maybe not. If you're on a patch where he's really good at sniping single entities, then Rotting Promethean. If you just want him for the ammo, no. So that's the Gunnery White's use. As for your infantry, oh boy. Unless a patch significantly changes Depth Guard are stuck in an awkward spot. They're not armor piercing. So if your opponent's front line is elite but armored, Depth Guard are not your guys. If your opponent's front line is chaff, Depth Guard are not your guys, because they'll take a lot of damage at range. They are unshielded and don't have missile resistance, so they'll get shot by basic arrows and still take a lot of damage. They'll get run down by cavalry pretty easily. So the only time Depth Guard are good is if your opponent is elite but low armor. So like Plague Bearers? Because not Bloodletters. Bloodletters and Demonettes will chew through these guys. Savage Orcs? I don't know. Depth Guard need armor piercing against infantry if they're going to actually be your elite form. So generally, Depth Guard are just not very good right now. Depth Guard polearms are fine. You kind of mix them in, like I said, with Skaven for the Storm Vermin. You mix them in to be like, you know, oh, we have some chaff and we have some elite halberds mixed in, and it just really slows down the frontline engagement. So if your opponent has a lot of cavalry or monstrous infantry, Depth Guard polearms are actually pretty solid. Sirens are almost always bad because ghosts in game 3 have 0 armor and low mass, but rely on physical resistance, which increasingly doesn't matter because magic damage is easier and easier to find in a game full of demons. But if your opponent has low magic damage and low leadership, spooky Sirens are kinda good, kinda, with low ass melee attack. I don't know. Again, I'm trying not to make this too patch specific, so maybe they get buffed. But Sirens will be good if ghost units are good. If your opponent doesn't have magic damage, Sirens can do well, but they're very expensive. So most of the time, you're going to be taking these guys, and deckhand mobs. Deckhand mobs if you're getting rushed by infantry. Polearms mobs if you're getting rushed by cavalry or by monstrous infantry, or if you just need more zombies and you ran out of deckhand mobs. We already discussed these guys. Your front line is pretty fucking simple. Now for the coast main bit, missile infantry. Pistols are great versus low armor. They're very cheap. They can fire while moving. They're very good. Very good versus low armor. Beastmen, Greenskins. Trying to think. Demons, honestly. So they're good. Bombers are good versus pretty much any infantry. Heavy armored infantry takes less, but it still takes a lot of damage from bombers. So these are your main infantry killers. Hand cannons are very good against large single entities. Not really monstrous infantry, but like big single entities and flying units. They are incredible anti-aircraft. Handgun mobs are good against anything that is not infantry. Literally anything that's not infantry. Oh, they're amazing against it. And archers are infantry. Ranged infantry is also pretty good against handgunners, but you know. Handgunners will kill any cavalry, any monstrous infantry, any monsters, any flying units. They're good. Love these guys. Deck gunners are pretty much exclusively anti-artillery, anti-archer. Don't do a lot of damage versus anything else. And the Shade Wraith gunners are just deck gunners, but on steroids. They have an amazing discourage thing, so they're great against demons or low leadership factions, especially. And that is it for the missile infantry. Pretty straightforward. Most of them aren't generalist. The handgunners are the closest to being generalist, but they all have specific things they should be shooting at, and if you're fighting someone, take the thing that you're supposed to be shooting at. For Monsters and Beasts, Fellbats have been terrible forever, but if you ever need a flying dog unit, sure, take that. Bloated Corpses are terrible unless you're fighting against all melee units or you're cheesing. But they're kind of okay against, like, Khorne, because there's nothing Khorne can charge a Bloated Corpse that isn't worth it, unless it's a single entity. But, like, if Valkia goes and finds them, then yeah, that's pretty bad. Bloated Corpses in general aren't great. Animated Hulks are really good mass for quite cheap, and they're relatively tanky. They don't do a lot of damage, though, so, you know, beware. Also, something to be careful of is don't put your animated hulks in between your guns and what the guns want to be shooting at. They are entirely here for what your guns are not currently shooting at. So if there's 2 Empire Knights charging at you, throw your animated hulk at one and have all of your guns shoot the one the animated hulk isn't fighting. Kill that one entirely, and then when the animated hulk loses the other Empire Knight, that Empire Knight walks into 3 handgunners pointing at its face. But don't try and shoot whatever your animated hulks are blocking, because they're blocking it. You can't see it. Dogs are similar to wolf rats, but they're a lot worse. Now, maybe on a future patch they'll be better, but generally they're good for sneaking into enemy lines and getting archers, but they need to be uncontested. Cavalry runs them down pretty easily. Melee infantry beats them up pretty easily. They are exclusively, if I find archers, I can probably kill them, unless they're high elf archers, then I lose to those two. Fuck you, scurvy dogs. But they're necessary, even though they're bad. Mournguls and Rotting Prometheans are 2 sides of the same coin. They're mostly rushing aspects. It's just Mournguls deal more damage in general, and Rotting Prometheans are tankier in general. In general, doing a lot of work there. The Night Terrors... Actually, all Mournguls cause terrors. They might get stuff to rout faster, while Rotting Prometheans cause fear. But both of them are rushing tools. Rotting Leviathan is a rushing tool to deal with a bunch of low armor-piercing infantry, like archers. Can clear a lot of archers. Deathstreak Terrorgeist is a bit of a duelist or an aerial combatant. Can deal with a lot of flying monsters. Push them away. Self-regeneration makes it quite good. So Deathstreak Terrorgeist is okay. Just very niche. In come the flying units. Depending on what meta you're in, handgunners are good at sniping out single things or cavalry. Bombers are good at clearing out infantry or archers. And the pistols aren't very good. But if they are good, they're against large targets with low armor, like light cavalry and big monsters, probably like beastmen. But that depends. And obviously the bombers with the archers, you need to come in at an angle so the archers aren't shooting you on the way in because you're very fragile. But deck droppers will usually only be good in a meta where the gunnery wight can keep giving them ammo up in the air. And if you spend your time killing whatever can kill the deck droppers, and then the deck droppers just get to shoot for free for the rest of the game, then that's where they're going to be good. Rotting Prometheans with the gunnery mobs on top are excellent units. They're usually used defensively because of their shotguns. They can do an insane amount of damage to stuff that they're in melee with, but they're so expensive you generally don't want to just walk them into the enemy backline and fuck around. You want to keep them near your precious things, so if you're defending a 550 gold handgunner with this thing, and an Empire Knight comes running at them, you can get this in the way and kill it for free. Or if anything else comes to fuck around, like, you can let that thing die, but get a rear charge in with these guys and surround it and kill it. So, they're kind of like the spider, if your zombies are the web. They need to go somewhere and kill something. They're not the web. They're not the trap. They're the... It's weird that they're on crabs. You'd think that they're the anvil, but they're the hammer. So, yeah, find something expensive and just surround them with these shotgun guys and kill them. Necrofex Colossi, they're just movable artillery pieces with a really good angle of fire, but they are incredibly weak to enemy artillery and enemy archers, which unfortunately this whole faction is weak to archers, so usually there's not a good use for the Necrofex Colossus because they're just weak to what the rest of your roster is weak to, but they can be good versus like skirmish cav specifically. If your opponent has no standing archers, just skirmish cav, Necrofex can be alright. Mortars, anti-archer, pretty simple. Cannons, anti-cavalry, anti-enemy artillery, anti-single entity, pretty simple. Queen Bess, kind of a cheese unit, but if it's good versus archers, I guess. Pair it with some mortars and like really destroy the archers. But I generally think Queen Bess isn't worth it. She's really easy to snipe out and very expensive, so generally stick to carronades and mortars. As for a build, I mean, let's pick a random faction again and see how it goes. Pick something. Hey. Oh, Empire. This is nearly unwinnable. Yeah, okay. I just wouldn't end up in that matchup. Empire have a bunch of archers and a bunch of cavalry, so you're kind of fucked. Vampire Coast. Okay, this random thing isn't working. Fuck it. Slaanesh. Okay, so Slaanesh is coming. You're worried about cavalry, you're worried about infantry spam. Okay, you can go Noctilus. He's very hard for any of the Slaanesh lords to snipe out. Keep your free summon. Stay as low to the ground as possible. Get Melkoth, because Slaanesh's demonic units are, you know, they don't have a lot of healing. They're very expensive, so any free damage you can get out of them is worth it. Invocation, heck, this game is going to be over so fast it's not about healing, so I'd probably go Drowned Dead and Melkoths. Just get more summons on the field to slow Slaanesh down and while you're spamming Melkoths at them. Curse of My Death doesn't matter. Smoke and Mirrors doesn't matter. Arcane Conduit, like I said, this game's going to be fast, so you really want to get as many spells out there as possible. Wraith Storm's fine. The Hunger You're not going to have a good time grinding. We'll get it if we have the money, but yeah. So no healing Noctilus. A little risky. Could grab Invocation Hack just for himself, but we'll see how the money ends up. 4 Slaanesh, Seekers, Fiends, Demonettes, Marauders. Ew. So we know all their infantry and even some of their cavalry are weak to bombers. So let's grab some bombers. They probably have Furies. So handgunners are solid, and then we'll get the Shade Wraith Gunners for a bit of extra stuff. Now they're probably going to cast Pavane on our Shade Wraith Gunners. We accept that. But we're also going to try and make them pay for it. So I guess if we have the Shade Wraith Gunners, actually, then Invocation Hack's alright. I'd cut Drown Dead. You don't want too many spells that you're not going to be able to use. So let's go Invocation Hack and Melkoths, but we'll use Invocation to save the Shade Wraith Gunners if they get Pavaned. But that lower leadership could be very helpful against any demonic units. I'll get a 5th handgun mob just because they're amazing. So let's see. We have 3 bombers, 5 handgunners, and a Shade Wraith. I'll fill out the rest with pistols. I don't have unit caps on, but if you did, you would see that now my range units are all grayed out. So let's cut 1 pistol. Missile units. Oh, I just miscounted. Okay. Yeah, because I do want the Lamper's Revenge. Actually, do I even want the Lamper's Revenge versus Slaanesh? Slaanesh has a crazy amount of armor piercing. I'll wait on that, but I also don't want to burn all my range units just yet. But pistol mobs will be fine versus Seekers, Fiends, Furies, anything like that. So they're just good to keep tossing there. Otherwise, I'll just use some basic zombies. We don't really need the pole arms because their large units don't have that great of armor anyway. So that's pretty whatever. Dogs, there's no archers to run down, so it doesn't really matter. So yes, it looks like I can use my last ranged unit on Lamper's Revenge. They're solid. And then, since we're worried about Fiends, we might want to take 2 Depth Guard with pole arms. Fiends or Seekers, either or. In which case, we can cut a zombie gunnery mob to be able to afford this, and that's probably fine. So this is one way to do it, or only get 1 Depth Guard with pole arms, keep that, and then you just try and get more lads. I need 50 gold back. Yeah, you could do something like this. Instead of 2 Depth Guard, you could just get a lot of lads and form like layers. You know Slaanesh is going to churn through them, but it'll take them longer to churn through them, and that's more time for you to keep shooting. That's generally what you can do. I don't know if I'd recommend Carronades here, because Slaanesh doesn't have a way to kite you. Their only ranged unit is Martyr Horsemen, so the deck gunners already outrange anything Slaanesh has, so you're not going to get kited. The main problem is if you take cannons, they're pretty easy to shut down by, like, Chaos Furies and Fiends and Seekers and such. So they're just too much of a sitting target, which the Shade Wraith is, but we know it is, so we're going to put it in the center of our formation. We're also going to heal it and just really force Slaanesh to commit if they want to kill that thing. Remember to shoot down any Furies that are coming in with your handgunners and kill them off. I mean, Furies are, depending on your patch, somewhere between 500 and 600 gold, so it's not nothing. And if you just blow them out of the sky, they'll never get to the Shade Wraith Gunners. All right, let's pick another faction that's very different. So we're getting rushed there. What about if we're getting shot at? Dark Elves. So Dark Elves are going to shoot at us with Shades and Dark Shards, bolt throwers and stuff, but they also have a lot of light cav and heavy cav. Here, I'd probably just want a Vampire Fleet Admiral of Death with Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna. Elves in general just have such low HP that it's worth it to Fate of Buna them. I'll take the Black Parapet. I will put myself on a Rotting Promethean because I don't want to take the Hunger. I don't know if that's going to help me enough, so I just want the extra armor and health of the Rotting Promethean. But this is it for my Lord. Just going to cast Fate of Buna on some Cold One Knights real fast. Bombers, again, are amazing versus all Elf Infantry. I know I'm already going to get bodied in melee, so I'm just going to put a bunch of Deckhand mobs in their way. Handgun mobs are good against Dark Riders and Cold One Knights. Deck Gunners are pretty good against Bolt Throwers and Shades, if I can find them, and they're cheap enough, I guess. I've also actually been having success with Bomber Bats. What if we grab a couple Bomber Bats? And then we do want Dogs to run down animated Hogs, yes. Run down Shades, run down Dark Shards if we can isolate them. And then I want these guys, so I gotta get some ranged back, huh? Okay, we'll cut the Deck Gunners for now. I worry about getting kited. I would like at least one long-range thing to not get, like, hard kited. You could do the Shade Wraith Gunners again. You could do 1 Deck Gunner. But I feel like 1 Deck Gunner is enough, so we need 2, and then again we run into our range cap. Okay, if we're going 2 deck gunners, I don't know if I need that many handgun mobs. Two deck gunners there. 1,200 gold. You could get the Night Terrors for some terror, or you could get a Halberd. Either one's fine. It's the exact amount of gold I have left. In this matchup, I'd go with the Night Terrors because they're faster, and I kind of need to get between Dark Riders and my guns if I need to. But either is fine. So that's a build I take versus Dark Elves. If you want some variation, 2 Carronades is also okay. It loses the Bolt Throwers, but it's decent against, like, cold ones. Decent is the best I can say about it. Or you could grab 2 Mortars. But Shades, Mortars are getting Stark Shards. If they go with Shades, the Shades are going to walk up stock and you won't be able to find them. So, yeah, it's a little tricky. Oh, final hypothetical. So we already did a hard rush with Slaanesh. We did a mix of rush and shooting with Dark Elves. The thing is, though, is if your enemy goes with hard shooting, I think you're just fucked. Like, mass archers is so bad for Vampire Coast. It's terrible. So I don't know if there's really more you could do besides that. If they go with Chaos Dwarves, I mean, they're having 3 big single entities. They're going to probably Raffle Stomp you. So you want Carronades to counter Deathstreak or rocket launchers. Yeah, okay, we'll do Chaos Dwarves. I've already started. You want as many Carronades as possible. Honestly, like 4 could be okay. 3 is probably safer, but 4 could be okay. To counter Deathstreak rocket launchers, to counter Dreadquake mortar trains, to counter the flying bulls and all that stuff. You want a bunch of handgun mobs spread out to just counter all those big boys coming in. I mean, even if they have Bull Centaur renders, you still get a lot of shots off. No point in having Scurvy Dogs. There's nothing you can run down here. You do have to worry about Hobgoblin Wolf Raiders, so 4 Animated Hulks is pretty critical. You could go with Aranessa for a net. I like, it is reasonable. When I say I wouldn't, it's not like I don't recommend it. It's just not how I like to play. But like, this is a matchup where you could just take her with Spearfisher's Net and maybe a Rotting Promethean and then call it good, and you just net something important place and kill it. So fuck it. For this example, we'll do that. Then as a caster, I could go Deeps just in case they have... In case they have a bunch of Infernal Guard that I need to clear out, I could use Vangeist, and if they don't, then just a couple Denizens of the Deep will take care of that. Cut that, cut that, cut that, keep Power Stone, cut that, and then that's fine. So a lot of single entity killing, a decent amount of mobility killing. My front line can afford to be tanky. My front line can afford to be really tanky. In fact, let's grab some hand cannons. And then 1 Routing Promethean. There we go. This is pretty limited on the front line, I must say. You could cut an Animated Hulk and get... I mean, cut that too, just because I have the money. But you could cut some Animated Hulks and get some better frontline units. Something like that. Or you could just hope that the enemy's not going to have a lot of frontline because they're just going to rely overly heavily on single entities and cavalry to try to fuck you up. So something like this could be good versus Chaos Dwarves. All right, that's it. I'm done. Goodbye, I'm done.
Roar. Subscribe, yes, yes.